Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the Sarcastically Optimistic podcast. Yes, we are jumping right in because I talked too much in the beginning, apparently, and here I go again. I'm talking again about myself. So, why was this podcast created, Sarcastically Optimistic? Why was this project undertaken, as you may be asking? Well, let me tell you. This project, or this, I wouldn't say passion project. It's pretty passionate. You and me, The reason why this podcast was created was, again, for a conversation between you and me. We go about our lives assuming that we are alone in every regard, but we need actual reminders that we go through life together, right? If you want to go fast, you can go alone, but if you want to go far, go together, as the old African adage goes. So I just created this podcast to disseminate things that I'm learning, things that I'm not just from books, but also from conversations with people, from others, from friends, family, and these lessons and takeaways that are, actively helping me. And I just want to kind of share the love and present these topics of hopefully psychology, neuroscience, whatever, habit formation, love, community, whatever it may be to you. But I just want to not contain it in myself. I didn't want any of those things to get lost in conversation and, risk the fact that those key golden nuggets of advice and knowledge that I'm personally receiving, I am not the only receiver of that I just want to put it on a platform where everyone, oh my goodness, I keep hitting, there's a lot of hand gestures, that I'm not the only one receiving the advice that I'm receiving, but hopefully, since I find it helpful and I find it insightful, that hopefully people out there, aka you who's listening, may find it equally as helpful and maybe, hopefully, will inspire you to open your mind in some regard. So welcome to the Sarcastically Optimistic podcast. It's good to have you here. For my visual listeners out there, I'm very sorry about my hair. My hair is acting up today, but it's a great day. I hope you've been having a great day. If your day is about to start, just know that you are where you need to be. And I am grateful, and many, many people, more than you think, are grateful to have you here. So, jumping right into the topic, I just want to talk about this topic that I feel like hasn't been receiving a lot of love. Not in a way that people hate it, but I feel like it's overlooked many, many times over. And it's something I've been thinking about for the past probably couple days. And it is the act of visualization. And when we think about visualization, we think about the visual arts, right? Cinematography, film, all this gigantic blockbuster hits and everything. But visualization, takes a different form when we take it personally. Visualization is things that we can see with the naked eye, yes, but sometimes visualization can also be a mental exercise, right? So there is a book I do want to promote, and I have no affiliate connection with any of these books that I'm promoting or any of this, but it is a book that I do hold dear to my heart because it is probably one of the first books I read out of leisure, and maybe you can too. It is a very, very, not a quick read, but it is very, very dense in the case of all the exercises they give you. Sorry, I was reaching for the book. For visual listeners out there, it's this book right here. It is called The Willpower Instinct by Kelly McGonigal, not Professor McGonigal from Harry Potter, but Kelly McGonigal. And it doesn't just contain, willpower, we need to maximize it, but it also gives you very, very tangible exercises in which you can actually kind of install into your own life and will benefit you in the long run. Trust me, it's a very, very good book. Each chapter as well, which is rare, has summaries for each of the main key points and actually asks you actionable questions in which you can answer yourself. And everyone's journey is different, so your answers will vary from everyone else, and it will help you kind of construct this image of yourself and where you are personally right now at this given moment. So I'm happy to have you here. Going off of the fact that this is about visualization, and you're probably listening to, this podcast on some sort of platform where it's auditory, where you're listening to it and not able to see my actual face. It's pretty ironic, but going back to what visualization isn't just about seeing things with the naked eye. It's not just about you having 20/20 vision and seeing what's right in front of you, But visualization can also, again, be a mental thing. Like, as some people say, you have to open your third eye, the one, I don't know if you've ever seen, Everything Everywhere All at Once, or there's a lot of, even Doctor Strange, where they're talking about opening your third eye, where in your mind, right? Your mind is your third eye, and you're visualizing things way beyond the current circumstances, what's right in front of you, right? And there is a specific chapter in this book called The Willpower Instinct by Kelly McGonigal, right? Not the Harry Potter Professor McGonigal, but she might as well be, that discusses this active visualization. And this is a topic that, again, is not as prevalent as habit formation in a lot of books, right? Visualization is something I feel like has been discounted severely for the value that it can potentially hold in your life. So what is visualization? Just to kind of realize that visualization isn't just about seeing what's right in front of you. Again, it's about realizing the long term, right? Realizing the big picture of things, visualizing what you want, visualizing all these things. And a lot of people, confuse this with manifestation and all that stuff. But manifestation is actually kind of supplemented by visualization, if you think about it. Because when you manifest something, you visualize with your mind and your heart and all your being that you want something. You have something that you particularly want, and you visualize it as if it were a real thing that you currently have. And you create those goals and systems to draw you closer and closer to that want that is in your, that you really desire, that desire that you've constructed for yourself. So visualization is actually one of the many big things that has, been overlooked again. But visualization is a huge, huge part in terms of you taking a step forward into who you ultimately will become. And when we say that, when you ultimately become, right, which is not like a 64-year-old person like in a rocking chair in their porch drinking like iced tea from like Raising Cane's, but we're talking about visualizing how that future looks like, right? I'm not talking looking way past the wrinkles and all the health problems that you may potentially have when you're older and, God forbid you don't have any. Think about what that future looks like, right? Are you going to be having a family? Are you going to be by yourself? Are you going to be a millionaire, a business owner of many different things? Visualizing that particular future is actually very, very beneficial in the very, very long run, right? Because we live in this world, and this is the buzzword that kills a lot of people, instant gratification. And there has been many studies, the most popular study being the Marshmallow Study, right, that was being conducted. To give you a brief overview, the Marshmallow Study is basically just testing the willpower, or just basically the patience and tolerance with a desire when you're faced with a desire, right? Marshmallow Study, the reason why it's called that is because they got a group of kids, essentially, and they presented a marshmallow in front of them and said, hey, if you wait this amount of time, then we'll double the amount of marshmallows, and then you get double the reward. How does that sound? And they kind of give, and they make them wait, essentially, wait that X amount of minutes, even upwards to an hour, just, having them, just them and the marshmallow, just looking at it, and just, you can see these, you can probably look this up. This is a very popular study of these kids just like rocking back and forth, like just like teasing the marshmallow, like pinching it and stuff, just trying to prevent themselves from succumbing to temptation, to succumbing to desire to eat that marshmallow, right? So it has been a very popularized study. This has been done by like BuzzFeed and a lot of YouTube channels. Just again, going back to this idea of instant gratification, are we willing to wait that long to double our reward, right? Like, or wait an hour for the extra marshmallow, or are we not willing to do it and just eat the marshmallow immediately, right? Because we want that just hit of dopamine, or that we just want to know that we can have it and we want it. So visualization does play a big role. And let me go back to the topic. Visualization, you're visualizing what you want. You're visualizing exactly where you want to be, who you want to become, and what your surrounding looks like. That's what visualization is. It's not just what's in front of you. That is part of visualization. Example, the Marshmallow Study. The marshmallow's right in front of them. But visualization goes way beyond that. It goes even beyond to the long term, like your life, right? Like you visualizing yourself as an old person, right? And kind of forming your systems and habits in accordance to how you perceive yourself to be in the said future, right? So there's a lot of big points that Dr. McGonigal brings up, right? And going off of it, she really clarifies that it's really important for us to work on our self-image, So our self-image is something how we perceive ourselves. And a lot of us are way more, destructive in terms of describing ourselves, right? A lot of people can't receive compliments. A lot of people think very little about themselves relative to other people, right? If they receive a compliment, they usually just dismiss it right away. I personally have a very, very big issue with receiving compliments for some reason. And all of this stems from many different things, possibly insecurity, all that good stuff. That's not good, right? Insecurity. We all have insecurities. We're all painted very differently, and there's a lot of things holding us back. But what Professor McGonigal, Dr. McGonigal mentions is that it's really important for us to work on our self-image, not just in the current moment, but also it's very important to work on our self-image and how we perceive ourselves to be 50 years' time, right? How do we look at ourselves, right? Like we should actually have a visual kind of caricature of how we would want to look, right? So she gives an example of this girl who has a Facebook addiction, right? And how she beat that Facebook addiction is that basically, Facebook addiction is that she painted herself like with Photoshop or something as a surgeon, because that's what she ultimately wanted to be. And she actively knew that her checking Facebook was eating away at her goal, which was to be a surgeon. And it was just taking up too much time that she wasn't able to study and get proper grades. But what she did is, and it sounds really, really crazy, she took a picture of herself and she kind of modified it to make her look like she's a surgeon, she has a big house, all that stuff. And she put it as her wallpaper in her laptop, which again is a visualization right in front of her, right? It helps her remind herself that she wants to ultimately be that person of her that she sees in her wallpaper every day. So we talked about previously about visual cues, right? In a previous episode, we talked about the little things, right? Making it easier for yourself, by putting, good habits in front of you, making it really easy and accessible and sexy, as James Clear says. You have to make your habits sexy, as in like you just have to make it desirable, that it's just very easy to do. Whether that be setting up your clothes for the day, the night before your work day, or setting your gym clothes, the night before, and then the morning you just dress into it and then just go straight to the gym and things like that. So this visualization, right? It started with a mental model of visualizing how she would look like when she gets her surgeon job. She, makes that much money and then has all the things that are in that wallpaper. And that started with her head, right? That just started with her third eye being opened up. Now, to make it an extra icing on top of the cake, she decided to actually physically create that image with Photoshop, right? So she embedded it on her laptop as a reminder, right? That she wants to ultimately do that. And it's a reminder for her to not waste that much time on Facebook as she was so previously addicted to, prior to her making that wallpaper. So visualization, like we talked about, can be something that we can perceive with the naked eye, because, that is what's right in front of us. And that's usually, kind of, it's kind of dictating our current emotions. And when we have thoughts about who we want to be, that visualization in the long term, it's really beneficial to kind of construct an image in our head, or even just like she did, make an image or draw it out or Photoshop it of who we want to become, right? If you want to start a new career and like you feel really stuck, you can create an image of yourself, or you can draw it out of how you would want to look like in 20, 30, 40 years time, right? You have to build that bridge between your current self and your future self in order to help solidify the habits that you have ultimately dreamed of having, right? Waking up early, exercising, things like that. Let's say that you're not at your ideal weight, like you're actually way above your ideal weight and you want to get fit. There is also another case in the book where she discusses someone who like literally photoshopped like a six-pack on his body. Like he photoshopped his face on like a model's like body, and it helped him like remind him, like this is the funnier case, remind him that he really ultimately wanted to feed that fitness goal that he had for himself. And according to the book, he did fulfill that because he had that visual cue of who he wanted to become, and he didn't just keep it within himself. So going back to the Marshmallow Study, that is also a visualization situation, right? You visualize the desire. The desire in that case in the Marshmallow Study was the marshmallow for those kids. And the kids that were least successful were the ones that were just actively looking at the marshmallow, that were just like pinching it, like, oh my gosh, I really want this, things like that, because this is visualization gone wrong, where the desire that is not going to benefit you, in this case, the high sugar content filled marshmallow, the kids that were not successful in waiting that long, that and ultimately ended up eating it before the timer ran out for the second marshmallow, were pinching it, were looking at it, were smelling it. They were just kind of entertaining the idea and visualizing themselves eating it already. So it kind of made it easier for them when they ultimately did eat it, because they received that instant gratification. While those kids that were most successful in this study were the ones that looked away, that did something else, that deviated their attention to a separate activity, that kind of, again, withdrew their attention from the current marshmallow, the desire to do so. So going back to it, desire of a given thing and visualizing that desire can have its good side and its bad side, right? Visualization of the wrong things, right? Like the things that you're trying to get rid of, like junk food. Having those visual cues of having junk food just laid out on your table in the living room or something like that, of course, will increase your tendency to possibly eat that said junk food. As opposed to, let's say, you take out all the junk food and you replace it with, healthier snacks or maybe like fruit or things like that, then you are making it easier for yourself to access those said snacks. I know like it may be painful in the beginning, but having it visually pleasing right in front of you, it makes it easier, at least slightly easier for you to choose the better choice, right? You're kind of restricting yourself. So going back to the marshmallow study, the marshmallow's right in front of them. And it's very, very hard for us to kind of damper our desire for something that, we know won't benefit us in the long term, but will benefit us in the short term, when it's right in front of us, right? If we have junk food, if I have like a jar of candy, as Professor McGonigal, in this case, says that I put a candy on top of my desk, I will have the tendency to eat it, right? But if I hide it, if I take it away from my visual field, then that likelihood of me actually eating the candy will significantly reduce. She said, like in her situation, it was like a teacher putting candy on his desk and then putting it on his desk and then putting it in his desk, and it reduced his eating consumption to like 1/3 of the time he usually eats it. So visualization has many parts. So to kind of summarize everything, right? Visualization, it's important to create a self-image of yourself. How do you look like in the future, right? Like ideally, we're not going to draw ourselves as something that we don't want to become. We're not going to see ourselves we're not going to draw ourselves like overweight and things like that. We're going to draw ourselves into someone we ultimately want to become, someone that's like super fit and like has a big house and all that stuff, right? We want to see ourselves in a positive light. So creating that self-image of yourself, whether it be in your mind and ideally writing it out or drawing it out, will help you probably propel yourself closer and closer to that image, right? Creating that bridge between your current self, which is, still learning, and the 2.0 version of yourself, as Professor McGonigal says, bridging those two and realizing that those two are the same person at the end of the day is going to benefit you greatly, especially when you're going to play the long game, because life is not about instant gratification. It's actually about being patient and living in the ebbing and flowing of life as we know it, right? So other examples of this, right? I do have notes because I do want to get this right, is that there are certain terms that she pulls up that I feel like a lot of people need to hear. So there's one situation, right? Going back to the Marshmallow Study, it didn't just, that study of desire and the visualization of desire didn't just start with the Marshmallow Study, right? That was a long time coming. So one of the examples that she brought up, Professor McGonigal in the book, is that in 1519, right, that's like conquistador era, right? So there was an explorer conquistador named Hernan Cortez, and he was on the search for gold and silver. So he went from like Cuba to Mexico and such like that. And as you know, the conquistadors were always greeted with battle by the natives, right? Just to push history a bit. So he knew that the battle was coming, and he could already feel the paralyzing attitude of his soldiers. Like they didn't want to go into battle and things like that. And, of course, they were probably beckoning the idea of retreating immediately when they see war or like the first shot being fired. So what Hernan Cortez, the explorer, the leader and captain of this group, did was, because the boats behind them, as they were kind of walking inward and inward, inland, he sees that they keep looking back at their ships, right, that are docked. So what he did is he burned all the ships, right, to remove that. And you're like, what? Why would he burn all the ships? And it's because he wanted to remove the desire, or remove the thought of them retreating from the battle that's about to come, right? And again, cutting off those thoughts, will reduce your decision making. It kind of restricts you down into one decision, right? Like for instance, I don't want to draw an analogy, but I kind of am, between, your healthy and junk food snacks and Hernan Cortez's burning of ships, but it's kind of similar in a way, right? You are restricting your decision making from, easily getting candy off of the table, which is like, on the table, or junk food on the table. And now you're replacing it with healthy fruit, because that is the only option that you're giving yourself. And you don't do this to the point where it's destructive and not sustainable, right? Like you're not forcing yourself to do it, but you're kind of, ease into it. Like you're trying to give yourself a little more time to understand these new abilities and these new habits that you're trying to form for yourself. So don't make it too unsexy, right? Don't go from oh, I'm going to eat 100 vegetables a day, from your typical chicken and rice that you have been doing for the past 4 years. It's not going to be sustainable. Do it little by little, right? The little things, right? It's all about the little things, going back to that episode. So putting some distance between you and the desire that is not going to help you, like eating those junk food or any of that, will greatly benefit your goal of developing those good habits, right? So are you willing to sacrifice the temporary? Are you willing to, not sacrifice, are you willing to dive into this field of temporary discomfort in order to win the game? Or would you rather have immediate gratification, or instant gratification, as some people say? So always remember, visualization does play a big role. So if I were to summarize this entire episode into kind of bullet points, number 1, the bridge between your current self and your future self should be created as soon as possible. You have to know that future, in my case, future Ramel or future Ted or future whatever, they are a direct result of what you're deciding on doing today with your current self, right? Just imagine yourself 50 years from now is you 2.0. They are basically the fruits of your labor, of which you are deciding the fruits, the labor of which you're doing today, the hard work that you're doing today. So creating and understanding that there is a bridge between your current self and yourself 2.0, those are the same person. That lesson, take it as such that you are making decisions for your future self. And if you don't make the right decisions, then, you can't expect that ideal circumstance, because we all want that dream life, is never going to come to fruition if you're not focusing on what you're currently doing that's going to ultimately affect you in the future, which is a real person. Just realize that you are making decisions for a real person in the future, which is you 2.0. A second thing is that visual cues also can be detrimental, right? You putting a desire in front of you that is not good for you, right? Whether that be, studying in the living room where your PlayStation and everything is, you're making it really hard for yourself to focusing on what really matters, right? Which is studying. And like we said, with the candy and the junk food, if you're putting it on the table where it's in arm's reach, of course you're going to be tending to. You shouldn't be surprised if you see your hand slowly gravitating towards the candy, right? You should understand that you have to make it. You have to put some distance between those things, right? So putting those foods that are not good for you away and replacing it with foods that you actually do like that are relatively healthier will help you ease into the process. Right, so put some distance between you and the temptations that surround you. Right, that's really, really important. And this is all from the book, The Willpower Instinct, by Professor McGonigal. Just kidding, Kelly McGonigal. And it is a great book. It's actually one of the best books I've ever read, and it's really changed my perspective on everything. Right, and so just know that instant gratification, yes, you can succumb to it sometimes. But if you consistently fall into it, then those ultimate habits that you want to form for yourself that are actually really, really beneficial are going to be overlooked. So understand that you are in arm's reach of becoming that person that you're going to be in the future. Creating that image of yourself, how you look like, what you're going to be doing, what your surrounding looks like, right? If it's going to be a big house, a pool, things like that, then it's important to understand that you have to start painting that image of yourself now, so you know that that is a living person in the future waiting for you to make the correct decisions, or the decisions that you feel fit to reach that said person, to become that person, you 2.0. And if there are temptations around you, you have to find a way to distance yourself, right? Because visually seeing something that is very easy, that's right in front of you, like a marshmallow, of course you're going to be primitively going to go for it, right? Because if you think about it, nothing is wrong with you having instant gratification tendencies. It goes back to when we were, the primitive ages, as they say. I don't want to make this too scientific, but when we were primates, as some people say, we cared more about the fruit that was right in front of us than the fruit that's going to be growing 60 days later. So that instant gratification from our prefrontal cortex is actually very biological. It's not your fault that you give into instant gratification. But again, it is in your control to control yourself and, again, play the long game if you need be. And I don't recommend you jumping right into something like switching vegetarian tomorrow, and then after you've been eating meat for so long, ease yourself into a process. It's not really good to be diving straight deep into something without like a specific plan or understanding that it does take some time. You have to be patient with yourself, and you 2.0 will be very happy. So that instant gratification goes all the way back many, many years before we introduced the term instant gratification. So don't blame yourself. This is not the time for destructive criticism. This is the time for constructive criticism. Create that image of yourself, because you are going to be a beautiful person, because you are currently a beautiful person. Excuse me, I am a terrible person by saying that. But you're going to be even more beautiful in 10 years, 5 years, even next year, right? You are going to be a very different person than you are right now. And you're a beautiful person for listening to this podcast. If this podcast was really helpful in any sort of way, do share it with someone. I'm truly trying to learn how to market this properly. I feel like I'm not that great at it. See, the self-talk. We got to work on the self-talk. I'm amazing. You're amazing. So everyone, thank you for listening. If this really helped and you do enjoy this podcast, do stick with the journey. There's a lot of good things happening in the future. And if you haven't checked out the previous episodes, feel free to follow on Instagram. This is the first time I'm doing this promotional thing. It's really weird. But I am on Instagram, Sarcastically Optimistic Podcast on Instagram. And yeah, I just hope that you guys found this helpful. I felt like I talked too fast at times, but it's always a great time talking to you all. And I do enjoy every bit that we spend with each other. Really, it's a great time. Go watch Doctor Strange. It was good. That's all I say. All right, everyone. Well, make sure you know that the future self is waiting for you to take that first step. Okay? I love you guys. Thank you very much. I'll catch you on the flippity flop. Goodbye.
Baby, why you always smoke a J, relax and watch some anime, come through to the pad I'm trying to play. The Super Smash Bros, what you know? Wait, let me pick Luke Carbo, you don't even know what I'm saying. Up B, and down B, now be playing, praying. Anything with you, baby girl, it's a day.